Alright, hello, my name is Alexis Santos and I will be doing the presentation of population estimates for Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. And essentially what I'm trying to do with this presentation is propose a method that relies on administrative information to produce month-to-month population estimates for Puerto Rico, and this can be easily done if the US Census Bureau engages in collaborative relations or collaborative agreements with the Puerto Rico Department of Health and the Puerto Rico Port Authority, and potentially this could be leveraged or done through the Puerto Rico Institute of Statistics, although you may want to have direct contact with the agencies also. And the foundations of this model come from the demographic balancing equation. For one thing to know about this model is that we just want and we should assume for Puerto Rico the demographic balancing equation is true. And I'm just quoting a well-known demographer and the PAA 2016 workshop on Bayesian forecasting, where he essentially said the demographic balancing equation is true. And I'll show you why in the case of Puerto Rico. This is fundamentally mathematical identity. First and foremost, I want to tell you a little bit about what's my motivation here and why I think we need to start rethinking the way we're doing population estimates for Puerto Rico. And I think the best way to do this is by showing you the previous history of population estimates in the island. So the first thing you'll notice here is that this is the population the population estimates for Puerto Rico for the last decade. As you can see, the Puerto Rico Planning Board had the population of the island going really close to 4 million, a little bit up 4 million, and the U.S. Census Bureau had it about 3.9 million, but not so, or not close to the 4 million mark that we thought we were going to break. After the 2010 census, the Census Bureau revised the estimates uh, and pretty much adjusted the population of Puerto Rico, and we see there's a plateau in 2004, which 3.830 million being the total population, a little bit more than the 2000 census, but never over the 3.85 million. Certainly not 4 million at all. And so this revision left us asking what happened. And despite having a positive natural increase, Puerto Rico had actually this population decline was mostly driven by out migration of Puerto Ricans following 2004-2005. Uh, need to remind, or I need to mention here that on those years, Puerto Rico had a mixed government. So governor was one chamber, legislature was another one. And 2005, where you can start seeing the steep decline. 2005, I think 2005 and 2006. Those years, the government closed operations for a while. So there was a lot of economic uncertainty in the island. The first time ever that the Puerto Rico government closed. And I think one of the other issues is that after 2006, you had the population of Puerto Rico experiencing higher rates of unemployment because the tax credits for multinational agencies started expiring. And I'm sorry that the x-axis has annual here. That should be year. But I'm borrowing this graph from previous materials that I had for other papers I've done on Puerto Rico. So what's the model we need to start doing for population estimates for Puerto Rico? Well, we need to first understand what drives population growth or decline, do a little bit of a refresher for the balancing equation, and then I'll go into the data requirements that I think could help us produce population estimates with a certain level of lag, but more timely than the yearly estimates that the Census Bureau does. And the two components of population growth or decline are natural increase. In the case of if you have more births than deaths, then you have negative natural increase or natural decrease, and net migration, which can be more arrivals than departures or more departures than arrivals. So natural increase, if you have more births than deaths, you're in the positive side of population growth for that component. So you have growth. If deaths are more than births, then you have your population declining naturally. And then net migration, which is the biggest component and the one that drove population down from Puerto Rico back then, same logic. Arrivals minus departures. If it's positive, you have more arrivals. If it's negative, you have more departures. And I just explained what natural increase is, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. And for Puerto Rico, uh, this number, the natural increase, remained positive for the last decade. It remained between 5,000 and 3,200, and this is monthly time series. So you can see fluctuations, and I'm sure somebody who's looking at this will see that there's a lot of seasonality in terms of what we're seeing here for that decade. This is deaths. Wait, this is births. So births remain between 5,000 and 3,200. Deaths, these are the deaths again. This is monthly series, and Puerto Rico has had approximately 2,200 to 2,900 deaths by month during that decade. And this is natural increase now. Regardless of the levels of births and deaths, Puerto Rico during the last decade, 2000 to 2010, always had positive natural increase. So that population decline was mostly driven down or driven by net migration. Again, I've gone into this in detail, so I won't go into explaining each of the dots. I just positive net migration, you have more people than arrivals, and we may stop calling this migration, and we may call it mobility, because we don't know if people are leaving and returning, and if they're establishing permanent residence in the mainland. We just know that there's mobility, there's passenger traffic, and negative net mobility in this case will be more departures than arrival, out migration, what we will call. And so if we move forward for net migration, that data can be accessed to the Puerto Rico Port Authority or the Puerto Rico Institute of Statistics. It's kind of like a good practice to ask both agencies for it and see if they're harmonized or not. And this data, the good thing about it is that they're actually available with 1 or 2 months delay in front of preliminary counts. So there's no reason why in the advent of the new reality that Puerto Rico is facing that we cannot leverage administrative agreements and memorandums of understanding to access this data. In terms of net passenger flow, this is a time series, and I'm sure anybody who's looking at this can look and see where the economic shock happened and how things went down following that moment. And then they went up a little bit, but then they went down again. So contrary to the previous case, in this case, you have a situation in which you have fluctuations between positive and negative. And that, I think, is something is worthy of noting. And and the highest peaks are not as high as the lowest bound that you can see in this post 2004 era that I've discussed before in detail. And so this year is around 2,500 or a little bit more, but this right here is actually even more. This is actually closer to 43,000 is the lowest point per month, actually, with regards to negative. So just to mention that this is what's happening with regards to net passenger flow in that decade. So if we think fundamentally about the balancing equation for population estimates, we can formulate this as saying that our population for next month is going to be the population of the month before, plus the natural increase, plus the net migration at the previous month. So with this in mind, we can actually produce month-to-month basis. We start with the 2000 census, we add the births, subtract the deaths, add the people who arrived, subtract the people who left, and then we have our next month. So from April, I move to May. And I can't keep doing this for the whole decade. And then I reach 2010, where I'll have an idea of what the population is for that period. Mind you that I'm talking about 2000, 2010, because we already have data on that issue. So I can fundamentally say that I'm validating my model before presenting you my results. So let's move into the estimations per se. This is a model that does not incorporate migration. The first one I'll present. As you can see, if there was no net migration of Puerto Ricans, the population would have gone above the 4 million bound that people thought it was going to be. Right here we have the starting point where we start with the 2010 census, and then I just keep moving forward as I said. Add births, subtract deaths, move passenger movement, and this gap between the 2010 census and the no migration model is actually negative 296,303 persons or people, and the estimates from the Puerto Rico Port Authority, including flights and boats, is negative 294,442. This difference is just 2,000 persons or less, 1,900. No, it's 2,000 persons ish. So it is a really, really good approximation of what the population should be if I run my model. The data I'm presenting to you is only passenger flow from airplanes, so there's going to be a little bit of a difference between that 2,000 that I should have and the other number that I should have with regards to the difference with the 2010 census. So I'm moving forward with what I just explained, starting with the 3.8 million from the 2010 census, and I just keep doing this. I keep adding and subtracting, adding and subtracting, adding and subtracting. When I get to April 2010, which in reality is just the end of March, I have a difference of 56,000 people. Then this includes the people from boats that I don't have data for. So this is a really good approximation. I think I did the calculation, is less than 1% error, 1.5% error regarding the census count and the population estimate. I also would note that around this point, I haven't taken the time to identify what's this highest point, but around this time in the model, actually I think we could do it just April to April. So this is 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years, 2005. So similarly to the estimates, 2005 was the year with the highest population for Puerto Rico. From there on, there's just a population decline based on my model. And so again, this is just the presentation of some of them, but I can show you just the time series regarding monthly, and you can see fluctuations from 3.8 onward to 3.6. So at some point there was 3.6, which is even below what we thought, or below what was measured in the US Census 2010. So there's been a lot of interplay between this net migration. Mind you that during this whole decade, births and deaths would always add population. So the main driving force between all these fluctuations is net migration or net passenger flow. So how does my model compare to that graph that I had mentioned before? Well, what I'll do is I'll add the mid-year estimates from my model into the graph that I already presented you, that you're familiar with from my presentation. And here it is. So as you can see, my population was never as high as the US Census revised estimates. You'll notice also that I fixed the axis here. But as you can see, there's a lot of differences regarding the previous estimates, the revised estimates, and my own estimates. Mine are 1.51% different from the 2010 census and lower even than the US revised. So my perception is that the boats would reduce that difference dramatically. Again, and this is trusting that we have good data for deaths, births, and passenger flow, which we should have because they're kept in Puerto Rico following the best federal standards. So my takeaway message and what I've been trying to build up till this moment is that in the context of Puerto Rico, we can use the demographic balancing equation to produce month-to-month estimates. One of the great things about this, and not only for Puerto Rico, but for the other island territories like Guam or Samoa, is that we actually have a way to know the population easily without a lot of cost, and actually can provide you timely information uh, to produce population estimates. We don't need to wait for data to come out every year. And what I've been trying to build up here is that the model performs relatively well when evaluated using population counts for the 2010 decennial census. And one recommendation could be to look for somebody from Guam or from American Samoa. Contact a professor of sociology in the University of American Samoa, or somebody in Hawaii, or a professor of demography in one of those areas. And I know Samoa has an institution, an university institution, but contact somebody who has access to the vital records and the traffic records, and see if the Puerto Rico experience that I just shared is actually possible to be replicated elsewhere in other island territories. And maybe this model could help as an internal check to some of the things produced. I know for Puerto Rico, this could help a lot regarding public administration and the base for population and economic forecast. So again, model performs relatively well. Puerto Rico has a centralized data structures with up to 3 units. I don't think you'll have to contact 3 units, but you may contact only 2 units, or just the Puerto Rico Institute of Statistics, and you can get this preliminary counts by year or by month. So what about 2010 onward? We know Puerto Rico is experiencing a lot of population decline, but we don't know the magnitude of this, and this has gotten really, really difficult to measure following Hurricane Maria. So this is what we come forward, and the model should give us a good idea of what's happening. So monthly natural balance for Puerto Rico. One key difference between the previous decade and this decade is that after 2016, let me see if this is 16. So this is 11, 12, 13, 14, 16. Yeah. By the end of 2016, Puerto Rico started having a negative natural balance. And I think if you aggregate this as yearly counts, you'll find out that the 2016 was the last year, the first year where we have negative natural increase. So Puerto Rico now has more deaths than births, which means that advantage, or that cushioning force that was the natural increase or natural balance, we don't have it anymore. So we're population of Puerto Rico is decreasing from both migration and births and deaths. This is the net passenger flow, and what the net passenger flow is telling us is how many persons come and go. I know some of you may notice some seasonality, but this here is the one that I want you to look at. This is following Hurricane Maria. You have the lowest peak in the series, so September is around here. You have October, and November is around here, and then you have December here. And if you look at this really close, this peak here is actually this peak from here. December is always a month where the net passenger flow goes up, and that's exactly what happens here. But now you have to notice that after those peaks, that it goes down. So if I were to forecast this, I would say it will be something like this. So we got to be very careful with the assumptions that we have about return migration for Puerto Rico. And even if you look at more series, you'll notice that July and August are areas where you have a lot of differences. So we'll actually argue that you're going to have a situation where it's going to go something like this, and then go up again and keep going down. So we need to keep a careful watch on monthly net passenger flow for Puerto Rico. This is going to be our best indicator for migration. And so how does the model behaves? I have to just mention, look at this red arrow. I have a typo. This should say 2010, 2018. But now let's look actually at the model itself, the information we care. The population of Puerto Rico based on my model, based on last year's estimates for me, were around 3.34. That's for the population of Puerto Rico, and that's the census period. That's 3.34 in that census period. Uh, no, this is actually pre-Hurricane Maria, so the mid-year population. And then like we have this steep decline to 3.06, approximately 3.06 by December 2017. So based on this model that I've shown you already that performs relatively well for Puerto Rico, the population of Puerto Rico could be down to 3.06 million persons. This is way less than the 3.4 we hear in the media, the 3.5 that some are arguing, the 3.3 that some politicians and some government officers keep quoting. I think the population of Puerto Rico is actually closer to 3 million than the 3.5 or 3.3. And I think fundamentally, if the trends continue and the patterns continue, the population of Puerto Rico is going to be well below 3 million by the next 2010 census. The only process I can do to validate these findings is to see how my model was behaving regarding migration and the total counts for the island based on a comparison with the U.S. Census, who is keeping a close watch on this. So when comparing the 2017 estimates, the mid-year population estimates for the U.S. Census, 3.34. My estimate for the same period was 3.27. So what this means is that the census and I are not saying something that is that different. I think that I think it is different because there's 70,000 persons difference. But remember that I started back in census 2010 with a 50,000 difference regarding differences, population counts and censuses. So 70,000 may be just a factor of the uncertainty level that migration exhibits for these periods. Also, one thing that I need to mention is that my monthly counts of birds assume that the patterns for the birds for 2016 hold for 2017. That's a good assumption, but maybe this number is going to be a little bit lower, maybe 2,000 persons less. But then again, I was already in 3.06 million. So I want to conclude just by saying that month-to-month estimates can be produced for Puerto Rico with relative ease. It's just mathematical identity. In my perception, and this is just a mathematical equation for a model that has been validated with previous decade, the population of Puerto Rico could be close to 3.06 million persons. This is using 2017 December numbers. Seasonality is observed with regards to bird stats and net migration, but there's a big shock after Hurricane Maria that we'll need to take in consideration moving forward. It may not be possible to do these forecasting methods until the dust settles, until we see what kind of patterns the data will have following Hurricane Maria, which is an external shock to any demographic process that's happening in the island. And I want to reiterate that the model performed relatively well for the 2000 to 2010 decade. My limitations here is reliable data for 2017 is not available, so I use data from 2016 as a control. This may be a conservative estimate, as birds may be lower than 2016 levels, and I think they are. I've seen total counts. And the model completely depends, number one, the quality of administrative records provided by state agencies, but also on how timely you can access this information. And without, I don't want to leave this presentation or finish this presentation without thanking Dr. Linda Laughlin and Anna Montalvo for encouraging me to participate in this amazing program that creates bridges between academia and the census. And I hope we can keep collaborating and discussing. I am able and I'm willing, more than happy to keep helping the census address the population estimates for Puerto Rico moving forward. I want to thank Dr. Jonathan Vespa for providing me the opportunity to be a census scholar for the population estimates branch. The experience I had with the phenomenal employees at that branch is something that I cherish a lot, and that is very similar to the experience I had with other census branches with whom I had the opportunity to meet during my stay here at the census campus. And at the same time, I just want to reiterate how thankful I am to the members of the estimates branch and to all the census employees for the work you do to help the people of the United States and the people of Puerto Rico. I know you guys care and I know you guys are really interested in helping each local government, each state local agency do good data analysis and to help their people. So for that, I thank you a lot. And again, I want to say thank you again. And any questions or comment are welcome. My email, which I haven't provided, is ars39 at PSU, Penn State University, .edu. And just a little bit, I'm the former director for the Applied Demography program. It is a program that trains applied demographers online. We teach classes on demography. We teach classes on demographic techniques, malaria estimation, access to data, data analysis. Uh, so if you are interested in some professional development, feel free to send me an email or to check for the Applied Demography program from Penn State online. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your emails.